Well, the transfer window has finished and Derby County have made their signings. They've also let a few players go. And we've also just had one of the best performances of the season so far. Game 5 heading into the international break. Within this video, we're going to be taking a look at everything that's happened over the course of the transfer window. I'm going to give my opinions on each deal and how I think it could go for the course of the season. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of deals that we're going to cover in this video. Well, I will put some timestamps down in the comments for each player and how long, obviously, the conversation around that player goes on for. So, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County and EFL Championship and League One content heading your way. Obviously, tomorrow will be the reviews of League One and the Championship, so make sure you subscribe so you know that when those videos drop. So we're starting off talking about the outgoings, and obviously the first one that I'm going to discuss is Darren Robinson. Obviously came into this season training with the first team and was in and around it a little bit throughout pre-season, but I do think this is a really, really good deal for Robinson. I think it's a really good opportunity for him to go out and get some football. I know he's made a couple of appearances already on loan at Hartlepool. He just needs to sort of do a Dejan Brown and break into their first team and be able to sort of compete with senior pros at that level and compete with players at that level to prove that he's capable. And then obviously as the season progresses and as his career progresses, obviously maybe next year he could go on to maybe a League 2, League 1 loan. Obviously we'll have to see how it goes this season, but I think it's a massive year for Darren Robinson to be able to sort of find his position and find what sort of level he's going to fit at, whether it be at Derby County or elsewhere. Now, obviously there's a lot of hype and potential around Darren Robinson over the course of the last 3 or 4 years because, well, is it 3 or 4 years? I don't even know how long we've had him, and it's sort of been ever since sort of Wayne Rooney and Liam Roseniors gave him a couple of opportunities in the first team. It sort of became sort of a conversation that he could become a first team player, and obviously we've not really seen that sort of development since Paul Warnes came in. So it is going to be interesting to see what happens with Darren Robinson over the course of this season. Obviously, realistically, it's one of the major it's one of only 2 outgoings that aren't free transfers, which we discussed in a previous video at the back end of last season. So it's one of those for me where I think this could be a really, really good deal for Darren Robinson. I think it could be an excellent deal for Derby County. If he can go out and make 20 starts at Hartlepool over the course of obviously the rest of the campaign, I think they probably play a few more games than us over the course of competitions and all sorts, because obviously you've got qualifying rounds for the FA Cup and stuff like that, which I think Hartlepool are involved in. So it's going to be interesting to keep up to date with all of that. So obviously, let me know your thoughts on each deal down in the comments. I think this one could be really good for the future of Darren Robinson. Now, this is one which at the time surprised me a little bit, but then when listening to Paul Warnes' position and what he had to say, I think it is really interesting. He was given the opportunity to win his shirt, to keep his shirt in that midfield. Tyrese Fornah was, and he decided early on in the season that he wanted to go. And obviously it's okay, players are allowed to move on, that's completely fine. But for me, I think he had the opportunity to be a championship midfielder. It was obvious we was always going to sign midfielders because Paul Warne likes to play with a 3, and we only had 2 in the building in Liam Thompson and Tyrese Fornah as senior heads essentially. So we was always going to bring midfielders in, and yes, I think we've brought in 4 or 5 at this point, but it's one of those where I think Tyrese Forner had that opportunity. He was given the opportunity, he was given the shirt, and I think in that first game versus Matlock Town, I thought he was really good. And I think it's one of those where I'm just a bit disappointed. Now, I'm not sure if anything's gone off behind the scenes, which has obviously caused Tyrese Forner to want to move on. But it's one of those for me where he had that opportunity to be a star in our midfield, and it's sort of realistically, although this is a loan deal to Salford City, he's essentially made the decision to leave. He's not been willing to battle for the shirt this year, which means Paul Warne isn't going to want to renew his contract for next year. So it's going to be interesting to see, obviously, how this progresses for him out on loan at Salford City. Really good opportunity to sort of build his reputation and rebuild his stock after joining Derby County last year and sort of not really being able to get in and around it. So certainly a good deal for himself. It's obviously not a great one for Derby County, who are going to have paid his wages and things like that, and ultimately he isn't willing to fight for his shirt. So I think it's a good deal for Tyrese. It's a poor deal for us. It's going to be interesting to see where he ends up over the course of the next few years in his career, because he's at a point now where he really needs to sort of find a rhythm and find a system, a team where he's going to play consistently. And as he didn't want to fight for the shirt at Derby County, it's going to have to be elsewhere, and it probably will be down in League 2, League 1, so it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses over the course of this season. On to the first incoming of the season then, and it is Ben Osborne, and I thought it was a really, really good deal, and I still do, and having seen him play a few times as well now, you can't doubt the importance that he's going to have over the course of the season. Obviously, a Derby County fan from young, used to have a season ticket, but then obviously went to play for those Red Dogs down the road. So it's going to be interesting to see how he progresses over the course of the season. Obviously, he's missed, I think it's the last 3 games due to a little knock that he picked up. But it's one of those for me where I think he's going to have a massive impact on the squad, on the team over the course of the year. But it might not be necessarily goals and assists that he's going to impact, but his work rate, his desire, his ability to sort of keep hold of the ball and pick up really good positions, I think he's going to have a real big impact on Derby County's Championship season. Obviously, after yesterday's performance, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Paul Warne handles that midfield, because I think the midfield yesterday was absolutely incredible. Obviously, no Ben Osborne involved in that, but I think this deal on a free transfer, he probably will be one of our highest earners, but I think at the end of the day, he's probably the best player in our squad. Obviously, he'll not necessarily progress, but as he gets more comfortable with the coaching team and the tactics that we're playing and things like that, he'll certainly become a bigger and more influential piece of the puzzle at Derby County, and it's obviously one which I'm looking forward to seeing progress. I think he's an absolutely incredible player, and I think he could have a real big impact on Derby County this season. Next up then is Kaden Jackson, a player who we signed on a free transfer from Ipswich Town, and I believe it was a 2-year deal if I remember rightly. I think so far he's been really good. I think he's really shown what he can do on and off the ball. I think he's got 3 goals in 5 now. I want to say it might be 3 and 4, but he's scored in every single home game this season, competitive home game that is. And I think he's just been really impactful. His pace is he's electric, and that obviously causes problems for opposition defences, and it obviously helps him in the defensive end of shuffling across and things like that. So it's really important to talk about Kaden Jackson in both, not just an attacking sense, but also what he can do on the defensive end, which so far I've been really impressed with. And it's one of those where I think Kaden Jackson is going to be sort of one of the stars of this team this season, and the performance he's put in so far has been magnificent. Obviously, yes, we've had a couple of poor games, and I think that first game at Blackburn Rovers is probably the worst game he's had this season, and I think it's mainly because he was playing that number 9 role, which sort of doesn't suit him or his style. He's not a back-to-goal player. He needs to be on the ball, or he needs it in behind so that he can chase it down, and I think he's done that really well over the course of the last few games. Obviously, we're not including Barrow, although in the Barrow game he was probably one of the brightest sparks in that second half when he came on. So I think Kaden Jackson came in with a lot of doubters around sort of like finishing ability and decision making in the final third, but I think he's turned that on people's heads really after the performances he's put in so far and the goals he's scored. It's going to be really interesting to see how he progresses over the year. Obviously at the moment we're using a front 3 of Kayden Jackson, Jerry Yates and Mendes Lang, and that seems to be working really well right now, and it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses over the course of the year. Will it still be Yates, Jackson and Mendes Lang come the end of the season, obviously with the signings of Marcus Harness, Tawanda Chirewa? You've obviously got Barkhazen and Blackett Taylor sort of in and around it on the bench, so it's going to be really interesting to see how that progresses over the course of the season. But this is a deal which I'm really happy with. Obviously, let me know your thoughts down below. Next up then is Jerry Yates. Now, I think this was a a really good pickup from Derby County, especially given the performance we saw from him yesterday. If we get that consistently, this is going to be a really, really good loan spell for Jerry Yates, and it's probably going to end up with Swansea City recouping a ton of money for him, because the performance he put in yesterday was absolutely excellent. Now, upon signing Jerry Yates, a lot of people sort of like, well, didn't score many goals over the course of the entire season last year. I think he picked up something like 8 or 9, if I remember rightly. I did do a full video on him when we signed him, so if you need to go and check that out, make sure you do so. But it's one of those where I think is not necessarily going to be a 20-30 goal a season striker, but is going to be involved in 20-30 goals over the course of the season. I think he'll pick up 10 to 15 goals. I think he'll get 5 to 10 assists. I think he's going to have a real big impact over the course of this season, and the performance he put in yesterday was excellent. His work in the build-up play was brilliant. His little flicks around the corners for the likes of Mendes Lang, Ebou Adams and Kaden Jackson to run onto, even the likes of Callum Elder. I think it was a really, really good performance from him yesterday, and I think if he can perform at that level to sort of for like 30 games, I think we'll have no problem in staying in this division, and hopefully there's an opportunity for Derby County to turn this move permanent come the summer, should he continue this form. Obviously, as I'm sitting here right now, we've only played 5 games. We're going to reassess these deals in the next international break, because obviously right now a couple of them haven't even played, and obviously Jerry Yates has only really played 2 games, so it's going to be interesting to see how they all progress over the course of not only the next few months, but also the course of this entire season. And I think this one is a magnificent one for Derby County. I think it's a brilliant deal to sort of bring in that number 9, although I still think we need another one to sort of help Jerry Yates. I think it was a really good deal getting him in on loan so early as well. He knows what Paul 1 wants. He's been working on that link-up play with the likes of Mendes Lang and Kaden Jackson since pretty much the first day of pre-season, so it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses over the course of the season. Now, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you've checked out my match review from the game at the weekend. What a brilliant performance that was by Derby County. That will be linked at some point through the course of this video. But if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and I'll catch you in the next part of this video. Now, here is one which I think is going to turn out to be one of the best signings Paul Wall makes as Derby County manager. Kenzo Goudmijn from AZ Alkmaar for a reported fee of £600,000. Now, so far, I'm not necessarily going to say I've been massively impressed on the whole with Kenzo. I think he's building in, and he's getting better with every game. Every time he touches the ball, he gets better, and it's one of those for me where it's learning the physicality of the English game, is learning which spaces he can pick up. He knows now when he's going to get hit and when to go down and things like that. And I think the performance yesterday was a real I think they normally call it a coming of age performance, but I don't necessarily think that's the right connotation for Kenzo. Obviously, I think he's 22 years old. I think he's sort of already had those performances back over in Holland, but it's certainly a understanding performance of the English game, and he could have had 2 goals, maybe 3 throughout the course of the game. He picked up some really, really nice positions, made some really, really good passes, and some really, really nice runs as well to sort of aid that front 3 and sort of cause problems for the Bristol City defenders. Now, so far, I think this deal has been amazing for Derby County. He's added real creativity into that midfield, and when we get on to the next couple as well, when we talk about the likes of Ebou Adams and David Ozoh, who have also added massive amounts to the midfield, I think it sort of is now going to become where Kenzo gets that free rein in the midfield. He doesn't seem afraid to put in a tackle, he doesn't seem afraid to get into a battle, but he certainly likes to drift out and pick up those open spaces to get on the ball, and I think he's been so good for Derby County over the course of not only the game against Bristol City, but also some of the other games as well. I think we haven't yet seen the best of him. I think yesterday was like his best performance in a Derby shirt, but I think it's only going to get better, especially if we continue with that style of keeping hold of the ball and wanting to make things happen. Now, I don't know possession stats or anything like that from yesterday, but we seemed a lot more effective and impactful on the ball, and I think that was mainly down to the impact that the likes of Kenzo and David Ozoh had. So this is a deal which I think has been absolutely massive for Derby County. I think the 600k we've paid for him is going to look like an absolute bargain come January and come the end of the season. So obviously let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say about the transfers. We've obviously made a ton of them this season, and Kenzo is one of the ones that I'm most excited to see develop across the course of the season. Next up then is Ebou Adams. Now, the reported fee of £500,000 is absolutely perfect from Cardiff City. I made a few videos, which is actually quite interesting for like the timing of the videos, because just before Ebou Adams signed, I made a video saying why Derby County should not sign Ebou Adams, and realistically my big talking point was the fee. We knew Derby County weren't going to spend much this season. In my opinion, I thought we'd probably max spend £5 million. I think I said that in my video towards the back end of last season, and obviously we've only spent, I think it's 3 million in the end. So it's one of those for me where the fee was the big talking point. We was never going to spend a lot, and I didn't think Ebou Adams was sort of in that stratosphere of being able to say, well, he's worth £1 million. But the £500,000 fee, obviously the add-ons could make it rise to £1 million, but the 500k flat fee is brilliant. We stay in the division, we make another 10 million on revenue just from TV deals alone, so that then covers the rest of the cost. And I think, don't get me wrong, Ebou Adams is a brilliant player. My only issue with Ebou is that technical nature, and if you look at yesterday, the David Ozoh goal where he tries a Trivela cross. Now, he could have. Now, the thing is, if he didn't try the Trivela cross, Ozoh probably wouldn't have scored. But it's one of those for me where it's in those sorts of positions where you want to make a really good decision, and ultimately it turned out to be a good decision. But he could have got a goal for Barkhazer, and he could have maybe scored himself. It's one of those where it's sort of going to be an interesting one to look over, and the technical nature of Ebou is one which is going to be discussed across the course of the season, I think. Obviously, physically and tactically, and his ability to read the game is brilliant. He knows what Paul Warne wants, and I think that's sort of the key to bringing back Ebou Adams, because he's massively effective in that sort of defensive area and collecting the ball and picking it up. Now the big question is sort of figuring out the best midfield trio, which I think from recent performances yesterday, I think you've got to talk about Kenzo, Ebou and David. Really good performers yesterday, and I think that performance and that midfield trio will stay together for the next game, but we'll obviously have to see how that progresses heading into it. Now this one, a brilliant deal, David Ozoh, absolutely magnificent deal for Derby County, because he's been amazing for the most part. Don't get me wrong, he showed his naivety and his youthful experience at times as well, and yes, sometimes he's been a little bit sloppy and a little bit slack, especially in that first game versus Blackburn Rovers, but sort of I think the last two games maybe with not necessarily Watford but Middlesbrough and who did we play yesterday? Bristol City. Those two performances where he was probably our best player on the ball for the most part of the game. Yesterday it was like watching a prime Yaya Toure break for a midfield, and it was magnificent to watch. It was brilliant. I sometimes feel like, especially when I was watching him yesterday, when he got the ball under no pressure, he didn't know what to do. But when he got the ball with 2 or 3 men around him, he'd take on 3 men, take them all out of the game, and make a really good pass. So it's one of those which I think David Ozoh over the course of the season is going to be a magnificent player for Derby County. The big thing is keeping him fit, as it is with the majority of the squad, of course. And it's one of those where I think Crystal Palace sent him out on loan to play games of football, and he's certainly doing that for Derby County and is massively effective in that as well. And it's one of those for me where he could go down as one of the best midfielders we've had in the Championship, and that includes the likes of Mason Mount, George Thorne, the likes of Craig Bryson. Like, we've had some really good midfielders in our time, and I think he could go down as probably that best midfielder we've had in a long time. Whether he topples the likes of Mason Mount throughout his career is a different question, but he certainly could come away from Derby County having a better season overall than those players. And what a magnificent performance from yesterday. This one for me, an absolutely amazing deal. Now, Rohan Luthra is a signing which a lot of people don't really understand, but for me I think it's a really, really good deal. And obviously we know with Zetterstrom and Vickers, they're 1 and 2. Luthra is going to be there in the background. It's going to really aid his development, being with a first team squad day in, day out, match days. It's going to be really good for him and his development. And maybe, who knows, if Vickers gets injured or Zetterstrom gets a suspension or something like that, he may find himself playing for Derby County. Now, I know I think it's his dad commented on one of my videos a few weeks ago, and I do think this is a good signing for Derby County, and I think it's a good signing for Luthra too, to sort of come and sort of shadow a goalkeeping first team essentially. Now, I know he spent time on loan down in the lower leagues, and obviously I think he was at Cardiff last season but was out on loan, so it's one of those where he could have sort of really good development with Derby County and spending the time with a Swedish international in Zetterstrom, and a player who's worth nearly £2 million apparently in Zetterstrom. It's one of those where it could be really good for him to learn off those goalkeepers and learn off the coaches like Andy Warrington, and then see sort of where his career progresses. Obviously, the main reason for this deal is to allow the likes of Jack Thompson and Harry Evans to go out and get senior first team experience on loan, whether that be in the non-leagues, across the course of the season. Obviously, I think Jack Thompson's played for Kettering Town a couple of times, but I know he's played for our 21s as well on occasion, so I'm not quite sure what the deal is there. Maybe he's playing for both. We'll have to sort of see how that goes over the course of the season. But this deal I think is a really, really good one for Luthra. I think it's good for the goalkeeping department, and it sort of makes sure we've got enough bodies in the squad to allow our youngsters to sort of properly play games and not just be sitting on a bench or waiting around essentially. Now, Zetterstrom, we spoke about him just a moment ago, and the rumoured fee is about 1.5 million, but it could go up to 2.2 from things I've read. It obviously came in from Djurgården. Now, there was a lot of sort of talk around this deal. There was a lot of people saying, oh, we should move on, blah de blah, because it obviously took quite a long time to get him in, only coming in, I think it was the day before the Middlesbrough game. I think he ended up signing, so was it the Middlesbrough game? Yeah, it must have been the Middlesbrough game. But for me, I think he's shown his quality already. In the 3 games he's played, he's the first goalkeeper that saved a penalty in a penalty shootout since Joe Wildsmith, I think in 2022. That's in an actual shootout, not in a game, by the way. And he's been, I think he was really good yesterday versus Bristol City. Saved us on countless occasions in that first 10 to 20 minutes. And obviously there was a few opportunities in the second half as well, which he made some really, really good saves. And he's been called up to the Swedish national team, and that's one of the reasons why he's come here, so that he can get that exposure and get that chance to become Swedish's number 1. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he progresses over the course of the season. I think his performance yesterday, and you obviously see his passion when David Ozoh scored that first goal, his first goal, and he runs the length of the pitch to celebrate with him. And what really good performance he did yesterday. If he can perform like that over the course of the season, Derby County will have no problems. Obviously, he won't keep a clean sheet every game, but if he can put in those levels, then it gives us a good opportunity to really go on and take wins and draws and things like that. And obviously, in this league, if you can go on a run of like 10 games unbeaten where you win 5, you draw 5, that's 20 points, and that's nearly halfway to safety. Now, I think we're on 6 points right now. I think we need another 44 points to be safe this season. But it is going to be interesting to see how that develops, and Zetterstrom is going to be absolutely massive to staying up. Now we're getting into the final 3, and Tawanda Chirewa, who come in from Wolves on loan. I do think I've spelled his name wrong there, I do apologise. But it's one of those for me where it's a really, really good transfer for Derby County, and it adds that extra depth because he can play across the 3 behind the striker. He can play as a number 8 as well, if I remember rightly. So it's one of those where he could be a really, really good signing for Derby County. Now obviously he was sitting on the bench yesterday versus Bristol City, wasn't able to get on, but that's not a bad thing. Obviously, it's a bad thing for him, but it's not a bad thing for Derby County. It shows that our other players are performing to a really good level now. Obviously, with the signing of Marcus Harness as well, which we're going to get into in a minute, it sort of adds a bit more depth to the positions which Chiwa can play in, the likes of Kenzo, Mendes Lang and all that. It's sort of those positions where the likes of Harness and Chiwa are going to play, and it's going to be interesting to see how they sort of make it work across the course of the season. I think this will be a really good deal for Chiwa, and I think he will get plenty of exposure to first team football, and if he doesn't, then worst case scenario, he'll probably get pulled back in January and we'll just bring somebody else in. But I do think this will be a really good deal for not only Chiwa but also Derby County, as he gets the opportunity to sort of develop himself into first team football. You've obviously he'll probably end up with the likes of like Liam Thompson and Dejon Brown and those players in sort of probably being more impact players off the bench until they have a real impact on a performance. So it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses, but I am quite happy with this one. Now, next up, this for me is one of the best signings of the window for Derby County, and hopefully he proves that as well when he does finally get into the team, because I think this could be really, really good. We've seen what Nat Phillips has done on a European level for Liverpool, so it's going to be interesting to see what levels he can hit at Derby County. Obviously wasn't able to play yesterday due to the nature of his deadline day deal. It wasn't all done by I think it needed to be done by 12:30, and obviously it wasn't, but he did come into Derby County, season long loan. His contract expires at Liverpool at the end of this season that we're playing right now, so it's one of those where I think this can progress into potentially a deal at the end of the season. Now, obviously Derby County won't be offering the wages that he's been earning at Liverpool, but it's one of those for me where Derby County can certainly put together a really good sort of spell for him while he's here, and then we can sort of discuss wage demands come the end of the season, because if he has an impact and the impact that I'm expecting him to have based on his reputation, I think he could be an absolutely massive player for Derby County going forward. I believe he's only 27, 28 as well, so he's probably got another 5-6 years in his body if he maintains himself. You obviously look at the likes of Curtis Nelson, I think he's 31 now. You look at Sonny Bradley in his 30s. Obviously you look at the likes of Curtis Davis and Phil Jagielka. Jagielka was playing well into his 40s. Curtis Davis has just retired. I think he's just turned 40. So it's one of those for me where football's ever changing, and these players are going on to play longer and longer and longer. So Nat Phillips certainly could become a massive signing for Derby County this season. Obviously it is just a loan right now, but come the end of the season, if he performs to the level that we all think he's capable of, I think he could be a massive, massive player for Derby County and a potential signing for next summer. And then finally, we have Marcus Harness, who's coming on a loan deal from Ipswich Town. Now, we've brought in Jackson and Harness from Ipswich Town, which are two really good deals in my opinion. Obviously Jackson on a free, Harness on a loan. Harness is going to play in those positions sort of similar to Tawanda Chirewa, and in a similar role to maybe Kenzo in that 8 role in midfield. He may even play on the left and right, because he does have that capability, and he could be a really good player for Derby County. Now you look at the depth that now adds. If you put him in those wide positions, we've now got 5 players who can both play on each wing. Well, 6 really if you add in Chiwa. You've also got in that 10 position, you've now got Chiwa, Kenzo and Harness. So it's one of those for me where Derby County have put themselves in a really, really good position for sort of every position on the pitch, and I'm delighted with this deal. I think it could be massively impactful across the course of the season. Obviously Harness and Jackson were mainly bit part players for Ipswich Town last season, and I don't see either of them being bit part players for us this season. I think they're going to be massively important. I think they're going to get lots and lots of minutes. You look at Jackson already, I think he's started every game apart from the 2 cup games, but he's played in every game, which is the important thing. And I think Harness is going to be on a similar level. I think it is going to be really interesting to see how sort of the front 3 is going to line up come the end of the season, because obviously you look at sort of the team from the start of the season and how it's already changed with the likes of, we've now got Zetterstrom in goal, we've got Nyambi starting at right back. The midfield 3 yesterday was Ebou, Kenzo and David, and the front 3 has now got Jerry Yates in it. So it's obviously going to progress as the season goes on, but I think this could be a really, really good signing for Derby County. Now, we look at the depth charts. Obviously, you've got the loan players of Tyrese Fornah and Darren Robinson. They're going to go out at the end. Well, they're already out. And you look at now the depth we've got in certain positions. Obviously, I've put Harness in that sort of role with Kenzo because I do believe that is where he will play across the course of the season. I think that's sort of where we needed a body. You obviously look, Jake Rooney's currently out injured. I'm not entirely sure how long he's actually out for, so that's going to be really interesting to see. Obviously, someone can let me know down in the comments, but you look at the depth we've now got, and I think obviously yesterday, Dejan Brown coming off the bench, I think it's going to be really interesting to see that striker position and how that progresses across the course of the season. I am going to sort of rejig this, sort of heading into like future videos and things like that, because I'm going to sort of put it in sort of the order that I anticipate people will start, and I'm going to change it to a sort of more like a 4-2-3-1, because I think that's more like what we play, with Ozoh and Adams sitting and Kenzo a little bit further forward. So it's one of those for me where we look in a really good position now with the squad. Still think we're light in a couple of areas on quality, not necessarily players, but on quality. But it looks really good in this formation, and obviously if you flip it into the 3-4-3, which we ended last season on, it also looks really, really good. This is another one which I'm going to sort of flip around a little bit for obviously positioning and where I sort of rank them within the team order maybe. So obviously let me know your thoughts on all of this down in the comments, each signing. Let me know on both the depth charts as well, because I think we're in a really, really good position now with the players we've got and the depth we've got as well. So it could be really, really interesting to see how Derby County end this season. Now, we've gone through every signing, and I put a poll out on the community tab on YouTube to sort of see what you guys think. It's a bit mixed at the moment. There's a few people who are happy, some people aren't. I think we've done a fairly decent job, but make sure you go and check out that post on the community tab. It'll be probably a couple of scrolls, but it's not that far away. I think I posted it yesterday morning, so make sure you go and check that out. I think obviously let me know your thoughts down in the comments as well. Don't hesitate to do that. It's a very, very interesting one for me, this transfer window, because we're going to go into January, and at the moment we don't have any squad slots, which was confirmed by Paul Warne. I put out a tweet about that yesterday. I didn't think we did have any squad slots left, and it's one of those for me where as we go into January, we are going to have to look to offload if we're going to want to bring players in. That's going to be interesting to look at. Obviously, we don't know how the situation is going to go with the loan players. Obviously, the likes of Chiwa, Ozoh, Harness, and Yates, and Nat Phillips, things like that, could get pulled back to their clubs. So it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses across the course of the season. But if you have enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well, and turn on that notification bell. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll catch you in my next video. Make sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.